I don't remember most of my life, and that's partly going to be the topic of today's episode. I know it's been a little while since I've uploaded. I think it's been maybe 3 months. Not that it matters. Nobody is here waiting, going, oh, when's the next Rory Excalibur episode? You know, where's Rory? We need to hear whatever it is he has to say. Thank God for that. I'm glad that this thing isn't like something I'm pressured to do or feel like I need to do. But before we start, I'd just like to do a bit of a debrief from the last few episodes. When I started this channel, or at least started making these Rory Excalibur videos, I was not in a good place. I wasn't. Mentally, I was just down. And I know that's a bit of a broad umbrella term. I was just down, but like I was down on my luck. I was a bit mentally fractured. I was pretty burnt out. It was just a compound of a lot of just mishaps and misfortune. And so a lot of the things that I said in those videos, I was like, because you know it's been about 3 months since I've uploaded. I was like, I wonder what I was talking about in those past episodes, and so I was looking back, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that's me. I can't believe I'm saying those things, and that's who I was. And I mean, like, partially it was. Sorry, I'm kicking the cable here. Partially it was taking me back to that time. You know, I'm gonna get a bit more in frame here. Partially that was taking me back a bit, and I was like, man, this was a tough time in my life. You know, I was just coming off the back of a long-term relationship breakup, and then a long-term relationship breakup that wasn't executed nicely, for lack of a better term, and then falling straight into a very toxic and poorly thought out situationship that certainly didn't end well. This compounded with the fact that I was just generally feeling pretty lonely at the time, and I was just burnt out. My work wasn't making me happy anymore. Not that it really was, but it became exhausting. It went from being hard to being hard and exhausting. Because I don't mind a challenge, don't get me wrong, but when it's like even the most simple mundane tasks seem difficult, that's when it gets really hard. Pardon me. And so, yeah, I just wasn't doing too well. I wasn't doing too well at all, and it's strange because I feel like a very different person between me recording this to you now and then. Between them, I went on a I guess it sounds corny to say, but like a soul-seeking journey. I went down south to Melbourne. I drove down there by myself. Spent a few days down there, did a bit of horse riding, did a bit of just a bunch of stuff that I wanted to do. Stuff that only I wanted to do, you know, stuff that I didn't have to like negotiate with someone on whether or not this is something that we're gonna do. I was like, if there's something I wanted to do, I was doing it. You know, I was doing some horse riding, I was doing some hiking, I was doing some target shooting, I was doing like a bunch of stuff, and it was great. And I was able to detox, I was able to just sort of decompress from the last few months of my life and be like, okay, I can relax. It was the first time in a long time that I felt relaxed. And so it was nice. It was really what I needed, and I'm back here now, several months later, as a very different person. I mean, fundamentally I'm still the same, of course, in a lot of ways. my dry wit hasn't hasn't, you know, changed that much at all, if you can call it that. My hair is a bit more funny now. I mean, I shouldn't take off the hat of a magician never reveals his secrets, but so yeah, so that's where I've been. That's like my sort of just decompressing those last few episodes. And so I'm gonna say, starting from this video onwards is the start of a new chapter, I guess you could say. I've learned a lot, you know. I've learned a lot about myself, and a lot about processing things, and you know, some of these things are simple things, some of these things are more complicated, and so I'm not going to go over everything because this is not interesting to anybody. But sorry, I've got like a frog in my throat today. I put a wizard frog in my throat, and so yeah, so that's the sort of just decompressing for everything. So for anybody watching now, in the future, looks like the program's crashed here. Let me just do a quick little reset on this. Apologies, technical errors. Only the best from Rory Excalibur, ladies and gentlemen. Alrighty. I don't know what we're up to. We'll just go from there. Sorry about that. So yeah, so that's just, yeah, so from this video forward, it's consider the videos prior to this to be not reflective of who I am as a person. I certainly don't deem them reflective of who I am as a person. I was just, at that time, someone that was very down on my luck and trying to rationalize it in the best way I could, or really at the time the only way I could, which is through a bit of a lens of naivety and can't really say optimism, because I mean I made a whole video about how I wasn't optimistic, instead very dreadful, but I was secretly optimistic. If I wasn't, I would have just let it go. If I was any sort of, you know, reasonable person, I would have just let everything go, but I didn't. And so yeah, this point moving forward, it's a different point in history for me as a person and my circumstances, because I've healed for the most part from the past two things, and it's great. It really is great. And you know, part of me really wants to take those videos down because they aren't reflective of who I personally feel like I am anymore. But I feel like that's the whole point of making a journal, right? Is to watch the progression of myself, even if it is a bit embarrassing, and even if it is a lens into a version of me that was more naive and you know, not as intelligible. But on the upside, you know, I'd rather be able to look back and say, oh, look how naive he was, look how unknowing he was, compared to saying, oh, look, he's the exact same. Because if I'm the exact same, then that means I haven't grown at all, I haven't learned anything at all. And of course, you know, learning and everything isn't like exponential. You can't keep learning forever. I mean, yeah, you can in like a theoretical sense, but like when it comes to certain things, you know, it is finite, or it just stops becoming interesting to talk about. And so yeah, that's just the end of the debrief. So I want to get into today's topic. Keep in mind that at some point this tape will probably finish. I'll need to switch it over, so if I get cut off in the middle of what I'm saying, then I apologise. I can't see when that's going to happen, but I know it will. So anyway, into today's topic. So the title, brain lesions and memory leaks. What does that mean? Well, today's topic, I want to largely talk about memory and how I've been struggling with it. Not in the terms of like bad memories, but I just mean like the actual act of memorizing. And I've been trying to piece this together because when I was a kid, I had a steel trap memory. I could remember things pretty damn good. I wouldn't say it wasn't until maybe, I don't know, um, like late high school, um, that my memory just started to fall apart. And by proxy, a bit of my self-identity kind of did as well. So I've realized recently that there's a large disconnect between who I think I am and who I actually come off as in person. Because I know myself as someone who's fairly articulate, someone who's able to talk confidently and articulate well the points that he knows a lot about. And much like with these videos, right? When I'm talking to just an inanimate camera, I don't feel any stress or anything. Like, I'm able to articulate these points in my head, where generally if I was talking to someone else about it, I'd be like stuttering, be like, oh, what's this word I'm trying to think of, And I'm trying to understand that, like, why is it so easy to talk to the camera, but I find it so difficult to talk to some people, And it largely boils down to a handful of things. One of those things obviously being, actually, we'll start with the first umbrella term, which is that I found, well, less found, but realized that a lot of how I behave when talking to people, is based around both how I want to be perceived, and also just anxiety. And so, for example, I've started talking to this new lovely girl, and it's been great. Things have been really good. Things have been moving along. I'm sure in the next episode I'll be like, it's all gone. No. But we fundamentally have like very good chemistry and we get along. What is confusing me is that I'll be struggling to think of anything to say. What? That's not like me, I'll be struggling to think of something to say, even though, like, there's so much I know that I know, and so much that I'm interested in, but I can't think of the words to, or like, not even think of the words, I can't even think of the topic. I try to search around my brain and it's just nothing. It's like a thick fog. It's like, have you ever like walked around your house or room when it's like pitch black, and like you can like feel the furniture, you're like touching, you can be like, you're trying to map it out in your brain, where everything is in this pitch black. It's kind of like that, except I can't feel anything, I can't touch anything, there's nothing in there, right? And it's not like I'm mentally deficient, I'm able to pull my words out of my mouth right now. This show isn't scripted, this show's never been scripted. I'm just riffing here. These are just all thoughts that have been like marinating a bit off the dome. Not even that long, right? And so I've been struggling to like think of like something to talk about, and I'm thinking, why is this happening? Why? Like, what's the matter here, right? And so I've deduced it down to a handful of possible reasons. Nothing's definitive, of course. I'm no psychologist. I'm just trying to rationalize things based on how I know myself. Pardon me. And so this has been a very unprofessional Roy Excalibur video. I apologize. And so the first sort of point is burnout. Recently in my life, university just started back up, and it's been the hardest time so far. Like, this is going to be a hard year. And I'm just very burnt out, right? Like I said, I enjoy a challenge, but it can become a bit taxing after a while. Like, the stress of it can become very taxing. And I think I've realized that when I'm stressed, I kind of just shut down mentally. I sort of pigeonhole myself, and I like, not pigeonhole, but like, I guess a kind of like tunnel vision, where I can't really think about or enjoy anything until the work is done, because the stress won't go away until the work is done, right? So it's cyclical. And so with this burnout, it makes it really difficult to think about myself, because I mean, when it comes to it, like a lot of conversation, like you can ask questions about someone else, but I also just can't think about anything relating to myself, or anything about I just legitimately cannot think about anything else besides the work until the work is done. And I know that's not healthy, and that's very much a fault of my own, and that has a lot to do with just my poor relationship with work and stress. And I mean, like, granted, I'm not as bad as some people. Like, I'm still disciplined. Like, I don't let it, absolutely cripple me to the point where I can't meet deadlines. Um, but it does make it difficult in that sense where, like, talking to people can be more difficult because I can't pull the words from somewhere, right? And so that's definitely part of it. That's part one. Is just general burnout and, like, work burnout. Part two is a bit more intricate and something I'm still trying to piece together, so bear with me here. In my past relationships, I conditioned myself to think that love was conditional. And that seems like very stupid, right? Like, actual love isn't conditional, and, like, I've always known that. Like, that isn't something that, like, I've ever questioned. Like, I'm aware of this, But I think it was more that I felt like I had to be a certain person to be loved, and that for some fundamental way, who I was as a person was someone not worth loving. And like, that sounds very macabre, that sounds very kind of like grim and, like, self-deprecating. But I never actually thought of it like that. This was all subconscious. I never vocalized that or, like, had that as a front brain thought. You know, I just sort of figured that I wasn't interesting. You know, it was whatever the opposite of ego is. I really didn't think that I was. Saying it like I didn't think I was worthy isn't accurate. Because I knew I was worthy, I just didn't think I was living up to that worth, if that makes sense. Like, who I wasn't living up to the worth that I knew I intrinsically had. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, moving on. And so, when, for example, I was in my first relationship, because I wanted it to go well, I was sort of twisting myself in knots and, like, warping who I was to fit this sort of idealized version of a partner for this person. Because I just wanted things to work. Just for the sake of things working, I was willing to change myself and willing to warp who I was to fit some sort of ideal that wasn't inherently me. And, I think it's healthy to, take on or, like, get interested in things that your partner is interested, like their hobbies and stuff. Like, you don't have to, like, be sticking your finger in all the pies, but, like, it's good to like, engage with these things just from a point of both respect and wanting to understand that person better. Like, it's a healthy exercise, of course. And so but I was going too far with it. I was going above and beyond with it, and it wasn't healthy. And so fast forward, 3 years later, and I kind of didn't know who I was anymore. I had forgotten. Like, a lot of the fundamentals were still the same, obviously, but my personality, what I cared about, what I valued, what interested me, had sort of warped a bit. And I've felt like that every conversation I had to be correct. I felt like I had, Pavlov dogged myself into believing that every conversation I was having was a performance I had to get right. You know, it was like I wasn't trying to be performative. That's a different thing. But I just felt like that I had to get things right, otherwise things would go wrong. Go wrong in the sense of like, oh, maybe like they wouldn't, you know, like me anymore or something or other. So I think I sort of compartmentalized myself within myself and sort of shut myself away a bit. And when I was with my, you know, my long-term partner, I was less present as Rory and more present as Rory the boyfriend. You know, I was Rory the boyfriend. I was Rory the boyfriend to her friends. I was a different kind of. And, you know, I know I'm not saying anything profound here. Like, I understand that for a lot of people, like, that also just is, like, a sort of way of living. You know, it's like you're going to be different things to different people. Obviously, like, I'm not sort of making a stupid assumption here. What I'm saying is that I was subconsciously forcing it upon myself in an unhealthy way, where it's not like in the same way where like you have co-workers and you're like a different person to your co-workers compared to who you are to your family. Purposefully, I was just doing. I told you the tape was gonna was going to finish off at some point. Anyway, as I was saying, I need my little wizard wand here to help me focus. Yeah, it was something I was doing unintentionally. I wasn't I was doing it in an unhealthy way where I was shutting parts of myself down to be pleasing to somebody else. And not in the same way that like you don't say the word retard around that one sensitive coworker. It was more in the sense of I was doing it out of fear, I guess. Fear and anxiety mostly. And that only became worse when I after that long-term relationship where I got into the situationship thing and, you know, online dating with like Hinge and stuff, where, you know, the waters were even more rocky then, and so I was changing myself to accommodate for this person. If I could froze again, I'm not going to change it now. Actually, no, I'm going to change it, but cut here. Okay, we're working again. Yeah, so I was, I'm just like, I know to you, I'm just repeating myself. So yeah, and that the waters became even more rocky with the situationship afterwards in online dating and everything, because I was trying to just make things work, and so I was changing myself and shutting parts of myself down. And I think that over the years I've done this so much that it's like a response now to feeling anxious or stressed. My memory quarters just shut down, and my ability to think of words and articulate just shuts down when I'm stressed, because I don't know. I think it's almost become like a trauma response where I got beaten down so much for being who I was, for being myself, either when I was growing up. Because I mean, like, growing up, you know, I kind of learned to mask myself a bit. Like, I was I was a nerd in the early 2000s, you know, being like a gamer in the early 2000s, you were a fucking loser. People forget that, you know? Like, gaming is such like a widespread thing now. Your grandma plays fucking Minecraft now, right? Like, majority of people looking at the screen knows what this is, you know? Knows that this is Minecraft. You can see this when you close your eyes. But you have to remember, back in that time, back in my day, if you were a gamer or a nerd, you were considered a loser by default. It was brutal, right? You didn't stand a chance. If you wanted to make friends, you know, like most kids played soccer or AFL or whatever, you know, and I didn't, because I was fucking a loser, right? And so, I was like one of two people, a handful of people in my primary school that played video games, and that was my main interest in computers and technology and stuff, and so I was an outcast, right? And so if I wanted to make friends with people, it's the same thing in high school, I had to mask my interests and who I was. And so I think I conditioned myself into thinking that whenever I talk to people, I need to mask who I am, right? The problem with that is my memories are who I am. Who I am lies in my memories. And so if I'm, trying to mask myself, I have to inherently mask my memories. And since all my memories are me, I have nothing to pull from. I have nothing to grab at. And it isn't just memories pertaining to me, it's just any time in my past, because I'm always me in my past. At least in my head. And so, for example, I've been going on a few dates with this new girl, and she's great, we've been having a great time. And it's healthy, it's something nice for once. But even though we have really good chemistry, there'll be these points where we're just in complete silence. And I'm trying so hard, so hard to grab at something, to pull at something, to talk about, and there's just nothing there. There's a thick fog, and there's nothing there. And I know if you just Google it, it'll just say, it's anxiety, or you're stressed, or something. But I feel like it's more than that, because I deal pretty well with stress and anxiety for the most part. At least compared to most people, I don't just curl up in a ball and cry, I'm able to get through a lot of sort of difficult things. And so it's sort of I think that it does relate to something deeper within, such as having to sort of mask who I am when I was a younger person. It fucking froze again. I'm not going to fix this. I think this computer's just starting to die on me. But yeah, and so that's why this video is called Brain Lesions and Memory Leaks, because throughout my adult life now, my memory ability has drastically decreased. I struggle to remember the things I did 1 or 2 days ago. I'll be trying to think what today, as I'm recording this on a Monday, I'm trying to think, what did I do on Friday? Why can't I remember anything on Friday? And Friday I went to band practice. I was in a car with my bandmates for an hour because we were driving to a studio, and then we did band practice for a few hours and drove home. That's not nothing to that's not something to you'd easily forget, But I was really scratching my head being what was it? What was I doing on that day? And so it's a bit cyclical, right? Because since it is related to stress, when I'm for example with this girl, and I can't think of something to say, I start stressing about how I can't think of something to say, and that makes it worse. And this has happened to everybody, okay? I know I'm not some special little snowflake who is just special in his own little dumb special way. This happens to everybody, But I'm just trying to more link to the reasons why that is the case. And I do think part of it is related to some form of trauma where I was just in any sort of romantic situation, I wanted it to work so well that I would just pull at something else. And I think the difference here is because this girl we have very little in common. We get along really well, but there's very little in common. I think I can't really just rely on things that we have in common to sort of grab at. And so I don't know. I feel kind of autistic. I feel stupid for not being able to I don't know, just pass normal conversation. And I'm so thankful that she's able to think of some things to say, because I just feel so stupid sometimes. And it's frustrating because I know, for example, me talking to you right now, I'm barely taking a breath, I'm just riffing, going on and on and on. Mostly about nothing, duh, but, it's, it's not difficult, you know, like I'm able to pull these thoughts and these words. And so it's not like it's not like I'm like illiterate, or, you know, I can't, you know, articulate. It's more just that during those times I can't pull, pardon me, I can't pull these thoughts together. And so, I think it does just relate back to a general sort of anxiety and a general fear of rejection, both physically and mentally. And I think this is just still part of the healing journey. Healing isn't done overnight. You know, someone new showing up in your life doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything's going to get fixed. And doesn't mean that everything is going to, all of a sudden, all your problems are going to disappear. I'm aware of that. I think this is just more or less the epilogue of this previous healing journey. The main hump of the hurt has plateaued now. And I think I'm just having to find myself again. And relax. And iron out these last few kinks that have been crossing my wires and have been sort of in the back end of my mind subconsciously, but I haven't really done anything about. And so yeah. And it feels like this right now. Like, I'm trying to think of what I was about to say, and there's nothing there. That's what I was going to say. I remember now. Recently, since my last video, I've been reintroducing myself to hobbies that I used to do but stopped doing for one reason or another, whether it's because of work and stress, or because of just a lack of time, or because I was shifting my attention onto something else. For example, in this last 3 months, I played all through Red Dead Redemption 2, and it was an amazing game. That's obviously not any brand new news. This game is fucking, 8 years old now? 7, 8 years old. And so I finally played through all of it, and it was honestly a game that came at the perfect time of my life, relating to everything, other things going on in my life. And for a few days, I got to be a cowboy. I got to escape from my current life and spend a few days of my life as an outlaw cowboy in the 19th century West. And it was great. And it made me fall back in love with gaming. Gaming has been a massive part of my life. Monumentally. You know, I've been gaming since I was 5. My dad brought home a Wii when I was 5 years old. And the first 2 games I played, Wii Sport Resort, obviously, and Mario Galaxy 2. Why not the first one? I don't know. He just had Mario Galaxy 2. He got it from a friend from work. I don't know. I don't remember that well. I was 5. But I've been playing since then. 3/4 of my life has been spent playing video games. Religiously. But within the past few years, I fell off of it. Either because I was just burnt out because of work, or just burnt out because of games in general. But recently I've been getting back into it, and it's been a great time. I played all through Red Dead Redemption. I played The Outer Wilds. That was an amazing game. I've been playing the Halo 1 campaign recently, and that's been alright. I'm not turning into a crazy Halo fanboy just yet. I know people say that the first game was like alright, and it gets better in like number 2 and 3. But yeah, and so I've been getting back into things, and this is an interesting point actually. I remember my long-term partner. One of the criticisms she brought up about me when we were breaking up is that I never talked about myself. I never talked about the good things happening in my life. I never shared what was interesting me, or just anything about my life. Like, all I would ever talk about in relation to myself was my problems. And even though when she told me that at the time, it like really stung, she was right, you know. And it made me realize, wow, yeah, I've only been focusing on my problems and not been focusing at all on the good parts of my life. I think my inherent drive to just fix things all the time has made all my attention be focused on the things in my life I need to fix. And obviously when you become an adult, there are more holes in the boat that you have to patch up everywhere. You know, it's like, oh, I gotta, you know, my academic future and my job future, and, you know, partners and buying a house and a car, and, you know, all this stuff, and the economy is falling apart, and the world is run by evil satanic pedophiles, and so on and so forth. There's all these patches in the boat that you're having to fix. You know, I'm doing a little dancing. All these patches in the boat that you have to fix. And when you're someone like me that's so focused on fixing things first and foremost, you very quickly forget who you are. And I've been trying more and more to just relax and to slow down and to let myself enjoy myself and not let things that are out of my control me. And naturally, I know all these things aren't anything new to anybody. I'm late to the party, as always. But that's also part of the reason why I picked up the camera again. I put on the stupid costume, and I'm doing another one of these videos. Another Rory Excalibur video. Because, like I've said in the past on this channel, and like even in, I think, my channel about section still says this, or something along the lines of, but this channel to me is a journal. This is my therapy. By vocalizing things and recording them, I'm able to decompress and detox and sort of put things together in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I was just doing it within my mind. And I only do this in this format because writing in a journal I find kind of boring and tedious, and my handwriting isn't too good and it makes me upset. And I don't, you know, talk to a therapist because they're both A, expensive, and B, not really helpful in the way that I need. And there is a selfish pride I have in fixing my own problems by myself, or some level of independence in that way. And so I don't even remember I completely lost the point I was talking about. Fuck. Anyway, so I'll just carry on. Yeah, I pride myself of like fixing my own problems. That's right, I was talking about this channel, and so the only way I can sort of not really like rationalize, for the lack of a better term, is to make a silly sort of video. You know, to take myself, sorry, my phone's going off, to take myself less seriously. You know, to make not to make a fool out of myself, but to realize that my problems are not as big or as serious as I think. It's just to take the wind out of myself a bit. Because by dressing up as a wizard, sitting in front of an old screen and recording myself on a camera that interests me, I'm able to detach a bit and realize, because like while I'm recording these, I can see what I'm looking like right now. I can see exactly what you're seeing in like the camera preview. And I'm just looking at me dressed up as a wizard talking about my life problems. Like, how silly is that? This channel, I mean, to call it satirical wouldn't be accurate, because I mean, like, my problems are, you know, my problems to me. Whether or not like they matter to anybody else doesn't really matter. Or whether or not that I'm saying anything profound doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, I'm still vocalizing my problems. And like I've said in the past, it's all for me. Dressing up like this and doing it this way. I don't do this because it's like a seek for attention. You know, if I wanted a lot of attention, I'd probably be a bit more higher production value. I'd probably have a script. I would probably make an actual thumbnail instead of just taking a screen grab from the video, like that auto generates when you make a YouTube video. I'd probably, you know, invest in like a better microphone or some better equipment or something along the like, or anything, right? But I don't do it because of that. I do it because doing this is my own therapy. And I could understand why, you know, someone would think that being your own therapist is unhealthy. And I mean, depending who you are, like, it certainly can be. But I think that after what I've gone through over the past half year and where I've ended up, I've learnt a lot. And decompressing like this has helped a lot. And over the past 3 months, I've kind of been spiraling a bit, even though, like, I just talked about how I've been rediscovering myself and everything. Like, in the mental back end, it's been a slow sort of circle around the drain, right? And I realize, you know, I just haven't done one of these in a while. I haven't vocalized this in a while. And it's funny because every single one of these times that I've done one of these videos, I've had like some sort of epiphany, like some dot has finally connected while I'm saying it out loud. And it's good because then it allows me to talk about it in the video. And so I think I'm going to try and do more of these. The only pitfall is that I need to buy more tapes, and tapes are expensive, and money is, you know, frugal. And so we're working on it. And so let's wind back a bit to make sure I've covered my topics. So the video topic, you know, the brain lesions part of the title is more about how I feel like my brain has been bruised in a way, just from past years of both neglect and neglecting myself. And the memory leak, of course, being about, you know, how I can't remember my life or form strong short-term memories. But who knows, maybe it's just because I'm smoking every now and then. It could just be that, you know. I mean, my memory problem started prior to whenever I started smoking, but I mean, I'm sure it doesn't help in the slightest. And that's just brain fog in general. But I do find it easy to talk to people that I'm very familiar with. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? This is very much like a bridging video. Like, I'm sure in the next video I'll be like, I figured it all out, guys, or oh, my life is terrible again, or like something else is happening. Who knows? I didn't think I'd be here at this point now. And so, anyway, I think that's going to do it for this installment of the Rory Excalibur Show. This has been very impromptu. Like, I had the idea to make this video not even 5 minutes before I turned the camera on. So stuff like the video fucking up and my less than, you know, put together appearance. Not that that's ever been something I've tried in the first place, but you get what I'm saying. If I remember in the next episode, which I probably won't, I'll try and be a bit more formed. But these videos are inherently impromptu in a way. I rarely do any planning. The planning more just comes from having these ideas marinating in my head for a long time and then finally getting them all together. And so, yeah, that's all I have to say. So, thank you for joining me on this episode of the Rory Excalibur Show. And hope you have a lovely day. And thank you for sticking around. Peace.